Hi, my name is Glyn. I'm a registered mental health nurse and a cognitive behavioural therapist. The Samaritans have identified very much, they did this report on men's mental health and this rate of suicide in men. And what they were looking at is why is the rate in suicide in men 5 times higher than it is in women. Invariably, one of the things that came out of that was that how men generally respond to the mental health problems is very much on the fly. It is something that they will tick along fine, and then they will spontaneously want to talk. What they don't want to do and what they find difficult doing is going on a waiting list for 6 weeks and planning to talk about something, because generally in male culture, male communication is usually done over a shared task, and in the Stone Age we could say that's taking down a mammoth, you know. But it'll be a spontaneous thing, it won't be a planned thing. And one of the things the Samaritans report said in their recommendations that services should be flexible to that need. And unfortunately they're not, because of the way the mental health system is set up. Certainly in the NHS, spontaneity is not in the clinical model. Invariably the practicalities of delivering a service like that, particularly in this time where money is short, is quite difficult. One of the things that we do try to do, certainly at Talk Liverpool, is to get people into treatment as soon as possible. So anxiety generally is marked by the worry of future threat. Okay, it's future orientated. So and it's the threat of uncertainty in the future, right? And people with anxiety generally have a low tolerance to uncertainty. So everything's future orientated. Depression tends to be much more about that person's view of themselves in the universe. You know, what kind of person they are, and what their hope for their future is. They're not generally, although anxiety does come into that, it's very much about the self-appraisal. So rather than thinking, what if a train hits me if I go out? You know, somebody with depression will be, you know, I can't go out, so I'm useless. So there'll be usually there's some negative worldview. Post-traumatic stress disorder is when we've had a trauma that we can't process, it's too big. So usually what happens is that an event will happen, it will, with the trauma, when a trauma comes, the brain is unable to process it, it's too big. The emotional content of that is too big, so it just hangs around between the long and the short-term memory. All right, and what you get flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, you get a hyper-arousal, which is a feeling of being back at that time because it's just knocking around between the long and short-term memory. It hasn't been able to process it. And you get avoidance behaviours, trying not to think about it, trying to suppress the thoughts, not going places that remind you of it. So those are the classic symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And what it is that the event has been so large that the emotional effect when you try and process it is too big. There's 4 main models of mental health in the sense that you've got what we call the organic or the medical model, which is your brain isn't working properly, the chemistry is gone. Then we have the humanist model, which is the best way to look at it would be people are stopped from reaching their potential. And then we get the social model, which is you're really not mentally ill until you're a problem to somebody. So in the psychodynamic model, there are particular phases in development that the brain goes through certain times in the life, and if certain events impact at certain stages rather than others, the impact is greater. So in cognitive behavioural therapy, one of the things we have this idea that through early childhood experiences, we develop core beliefs about ourselves, and these core beliefs are, the best way to describe them are like buttons. If you imagine a lift button, the world as it is will then bring events and triggers that will turn that button on again. All right, and then when that button is turned on, automatic negative thoughts will just come into the mind, automatic behaviours. What we will do is that we will often go back. We don't need to know how things started, but it's really good to kind of have an idea what that core belief is, and we have techniques of kind of finding that out. And then once the person recognises they have that button inside them, then they can do something about it. Until they do, they can't. So a lot of my job and a lot of what I do is I'll bring the invisible into the visible. You can't fight an enemy, you can't. There's levels of thought, you have levels of thinking. So let's say so what we'll do is that we'll ask questions like, well, what does that mean for you? You know, what does that say about you?